Guys, this is Pat here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Heidi and I came across a pretty good deal on a 10 by 10 foot shipping container, and it's almost like brand new. So we went ahead and made the plunge and bought it. I'm putting this project together in order to get the shipping container loaded on my equipment trailer for the dump truck. So anyway, I thought I'd take you through that. Yesterday I went ahead, and this winch was sitting out in the weather for some time. And I know it's a no-no, guys, but anyway, I went to hook it up yesterday. I made an extension cord for it, made some ends, pressed some ends on here so I can hook this to the battery on the dump truck, so that can reach from the battery box on the dump truck clear back to the equipment trailer. And then right now I'm making a winch plate for this 9,000 pound winch, and I plan on winching the shipping container, the 10-foot long shipping container, onto the equipment trailer and hauling over to the property. So at any rate, that's what I'm doing today. Like I say, I got the old winch and it wasn't working yesterday, so I got that working. I re-lubricated the gear end on it and got it unfroze, and it operates very well now. So anyway, re-landed the ground, the black ground. I re-landed it on the bottom part and cleaned up the contacts and put a new fitting on the end, so that's fresh and new. When I crimp these, I put no locks or antioxidant inside here, crimp this, and then I put heat shrink on the outside that actually, the heat shrink itself has an adhesive, and so it basically bonds to this this sheathing on this cable. I actually got this 1-aught battery cable for a battery project for some solar. Gonna go ahead and get started on this. So I made a couple of 3-inch cuts to accommodate the fair lead coming through these rollers here. So cut it out of jangle iron. These are actually still warm. So what I'll do is I'll clean these all up, knock the sharp edges off of here. These are 3 inches by 2.5 inches by 1/4 inch thick. The easiest way to do that is to mount this onto this first and then weld it on. That way everything is exactly centered and where it's supposed to be. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that a little bit when I get going here. I have these old flail mower blades the guy gave me, and so I'll cut these off at 8 inches. That way I'll have a place to anchor the system to, and then anchor that to the trailer. We can have this to where this goes out to the load, and this goes back in through here. It's a little less stress on the winch when you pull like that. It's not quite double the strength, but it's almost double. That's what the plan is here, is to make a place where we can hook up something in the front if we want to. But what I want to do first is get all this other stuff mounted up. Okay, I'll get these cut to 8 inches. I want to have enough to where I can weld in here so it'll displace the strength on this. We'll measure out 8 inches. Take my soapstone. Well, hey guys, we're back. It's day 2. It got dark on me last night, so we're back at it again this morning. So last night I went ahead and got everything lined up on the fair lead rollers and drilled the holes for the angle iron that's going to support the rollers. And I just hand tighten these so these have a little bit of free movement here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp this whole mechanism down to the table, and I'm going to weld around this area here. I've got this centered on the plate, fairly close to these bolts that I had welded on here for another reason. Don't see any reason to take them off, so I just left them on. Besides that, I'm kind of on a time crunch right now. I need to get this done. But anyway, I thought I'd take you guys along for the ride, just in case you're interested in building something like this. So I want to show you how I laid out the winch for the bolt pattern here. As you can tell, the motor assembly and the gearbox are not the same width and everything. So I wanted to get the spool directly in line or centered to the rollers, because if you didn't have this centered, then the line would have a tendency to wrap up on the spool on the left or right hand side. So we wanted to get that right in the center. So these areas where the bolt's going to have to go through the bottom of this plate, I had to get all that lined up in retrospect to centering it on the fairlead rollers. I measured center to center these holes, and the way I did that is I lined up, well, they call that burring an inch. So I lined up the one right at the edge of this hole. And then on the other side, I lined up the measurement on this side of the hole. On the right hand side of the hole here, on the right hand side of the hole here, I took a measurement, and that was 11 3/16 of an inch. And so I did likewise on this. You can measure it on the outside or the inside of the hole, but you have to take the measurement. Let's say I go on the outside of the hole, I have to measure the same on the other side. So let's say I go from the bottom of this hole to the bottom of this hole, or the top of this hole to the top of this hole, and that will give me the measurement to center. And so I had 4.5 inches here, and then the measurement I just told you up here. So knowing those measurements, actually that's supposed to be 3/16 or 3/32, and then this one was 4.5. Now this winch is a fairly old winch, and so I don't know if all the winches are made the same with the bolt pattern on the bottom or not anymore. But that's how you find the layout of this, is to take the measurement center to center on those bolts. I want to square everything up with this, because I have this squared up last night, so I can take all my measurements off of the ends of these, because these are all machined alike. And so I could come up through here and take my measurements. Now when I find out where my measurements are, or I could take a measurement from the edge of this angle iron out to where I know the winch is actually going to sit in here and not too close to the bolts, I could lay out my pattern so I can make a straight line. I could set back away from the bolts a little bit so they don't interfere. Then I came in here and I scribed the line. Now you can do that with a pencil. This isn't as finite, but if you can get a broken edge on it, soapstone, you can get fairly accurate in there. But you can take also a carpentry pencil or something, or a Sharpie or something like that, or a felt tip pen, and scribe a straight line all the way down through here. Now I can take all my measurements off of this line now. I can take the center of the spool to the center of my fair lead rollers. I always want to be cognizant of that. And so with this straight edge, I can line it back up. I can make my measurements on this line here, find out exactly where the center is, divide that number in half, that 10 3/32, to get that winch exactly centered on that spool. And then as soon as I get these marks indicated, made an impression with the center punch on each side. Now I double check my measurements and make sure that that's 10 and 30 seconds exactly. If it's not, what I do is I make a light impression first, and then you can take and you can hit one way or another, and that will push the hole left or push the hole right or up or down. Once you get that finite measurement, then you really make an impression and get your points established on that. Well, after I established that, but here I found center to center, which was 4.5 inches. So I rolled that to, I can go to metric on this on the scale here. You got metric, standard, and then you have decimal, and then fractions. That's what I was talking about. So anyway, I go to 4.5, lock it in at 4.5, and then go. I always go to the center of the hole and measure to where the center of the hole is going to be. Now, how do I know that's going to be square or not? Well, I can take my straight edge and go through the center of my holes. Well, you can go to the edge if you want to, but I always like to go to the very center of the holes. And then you can take a straight edge, or in this case it's a speed square, and I have a bunch of stuff interrupting here, and I don't have a smaller square, but if you had a smaller square that laid flat on the metal, it's a little easier to ascertain where that line's going to be, because you have this distance between here and here, and that's quite a distance. That's like 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. So I had to make that mark a few different times and line it up, line of sight, be looking straight down on top of this hole here. I line that up to where I can't see the edge of this square. So when that edge just disappears, I know that I'm looking vertically on top of my work. So I get that lined up and I mark that hole at 4.5, and that way I know I have a square definition here. So I can mark that lightly with the punch, and then I can go over here and do likewise on this side, and then make sure that this measurement from here to here is exactly the same as the measurement from here to here. And you can measure here to here and make sure that this measurement is exactly the same as this over here. Now there's various ways of doing that. You can do cross measurements in here, you know, to verify, but this is a pre-engineered cast 90-degree angle, so I'm not going to bother taking cross measurements because I know this is 90. So anyways, I got that laid out. I have this laid out to where I want it to be. Now what I can do is I can drill all these holes here using the proper size drill bit, whatever that is. Measure the inside of that hole. That's the 3/8 of an inch hole. So I can measure this hole, and I come up with 3/8. Or you can take a measurement here. I had somebody get on the YouTube channel a while back, and I was using a planer to build a dog door, and they complained that that's a ridiculous video because not everybody has a planer. Well, I told her that, well, we do. You can build a dog door without a planer. But anyway, for those of you who don't have a set of those calipers there, you can just measure and get really close to what you need here. Let's say that's 3/8 of an inch right there, see? Or you can also take a drill bit or drill index and see what size hole that is. That's actually got a little bit more slop than this 3/8 inch drill bit, and that was indicative what the caliper said too. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one here. It's just a little bit more, gives me a little bit more room for error. So this is a 25/64, just a little over 3/8. So I'm going to drill a pilot hole first. That just saves the bits a little bit. I want to make sure that the little holes are lined up to the bottom of the winch before I go any further. I just use this punch as an awl and run this up to the bottom of the hole and line it up to the mounts for the winch. And I just run the bolts in there just enough to know that they're going to start to thread. And I want to do that with every hole just in case one hole's off a little bit. Then I can make corrections now. Okay, that's holding. Then I'll run over here to the opposite hole. Run the threads in a couple of times. Okay, they're all going to work. So now I know that all of the bolts line up, then mount's going to work. I'll take and remove the winch, set it aside. Well, so the next thing I want to do is get this all lined up and clamped down, but as you can see, my clamps don't reach all the way in here to clamp this. So what I have is a couple of pieces of metal that I'll lay across there just so I can tack these in place. They have clamps that'll reach in there a little further, but I don't have any, so I make do with what I have. Now, if you didn't necessarily understand before why I just finger tighten these and assemble this on the fair lead rollers, is because now when I weld all this together, these mountain holes will be perfectly lined up with the fair lead roller assembly, and there won't be any question. Those holes will line up perfectly because now they're being held in place. I can weld all this together. So I changed my mind on the clamping situation here, because when I clamp this down, this is going to be pressing harder against the base than this corner over here. And it's probably not a big deal in the scheme of things, but I think it's a little bit more accurate to say if I can clamp this on evenly with one piece clear across here, equal pressure all the way across through there. So in short, I'm going to go ahead and place a longer piece in here to get equal pressure all the way across the surface of these two adapters, or these two mounting angle iron pieces. So loosely clamp that one. Got that one just a little bit tighter. That's holding it in place. It's probably good enough, but I'll come back and check the pressure on this one. It could go for it to be a little bit more. That's really solid, so I'll remeasure and make sure everything is where it's supposed to be. It didn't move on me. Now, I don't make any claims to be a professional welder. As some of you who knows better can tell. I know a guy should clean the metal up and make sure there's no grease, or in this case cutting oil, and remove the rust if you can, remove the paint. But I'm using 6013. That's just pretty forgiving with old metal and rusty metal. Been my experience anyway. I'm kind of in a rush, so I probably shouldn't even be doing this video, but at any rate, we're just going to burn through it and hope for the best. I have the plate flipped over. The backside was pretty dirty, so I did use acetone and clean up this area pretty good so the weld will stick. But I got this centered and squared, and now I'm ready to weld this in place. This will be the tail bolt for the whole thing. Hook a chain to this and then hook that to the D-rings on the trailer. Well, it ain't drop dead gorgeous, but I think it'll hold. I ended up turning up the heat and trying a couple of different techniques, and I think that'll do okay. And I'll flip it back over and weld the back side of this where top of the base meets the tail hold area. Well, I think that's good enough. This is a thicker piece of metal than this, so you want to hold your welding rod closer to the thick metal, so because it takes longer to melt than the thinner piece on top. So a lot of this stuff I have to, by the time I get done with my welding project, I may remember these things. But the welds are getting a little bit better. The ones over here, I know that I didn't have the heat up high enough on these, and that's why they look so terrible, but it's going to work out just fine. We'll let that cool, and I want to make another one of these for the front. Now, as you can see, I built a couple of skids here in between filming, and what this allows me to do is allows this whole platform to sit on any surface but not scratch the surface. So these wooden 4x4s that I have underneath here will suspend this over or raise this above whatever I set this on. So if I set this on the deck of the trailer, then it won't skin the trailer as it's moving back and forth. Another thing that I was planning on doing yesterday is I was planning on taking both of these little rings here and having, for the hold for the back, but I got to thinking about that last night, and I want this to be able to face perfectly towards the load at a perpendicular or 90-degree angle, however you want to view that. Now, if I had two holdings in the back, it would try to hold this straight, and let's say the line was heading out this way. Well, as it spools in, it's going to want to stay on this side of the spool on the winch. So if this is always facing towards the load and the line is facing out that way all the time, it'll be easier to track the cable back onto the winch itself, on the winch spool. So that's why I went with a singular attachment on the front and the back. And so this attachment here will be if I wanted to double over a block on the load and then come back and tie into this. That way that'll increase my pulling capacity of the winch. So I need to go ahead and bolt these on. I have 3 holes that I have bored into this plate, and now I need to bore another hole inside of the wood that is the same size as the inside of the thread. So right there in the shank, I want to drill that out so this is easier to install. Find out how big just the inside of the threads are, and it's 39 5/16. I'm going to go with 1964, so it's a nice tight bite on that. I like the Walt tools, but I'm not a big fan of their chucks. They don't seem to hold that well. I got the two lag bolts in the ends. I can go ahead and tighten the front one back down, or tighten it all the way down, and then finish out the middle one. Now it's just a matter of mounting the winch and figured out a way to get it out to the truck. I think I need to go buy a mule or something like that so he can pack it out there, but 4 men might be able to lift this. I don't know. Well, we got the winch on here. We're going to go ahead and mount it. I ran a bead, another welding bead across this front piece after I've turned it over. I actually did weld a couple more, redone a couple of these welds after I turned up the heat on the welder. Again, this isn't a welding video. Some of you guys that actually weld really well out there will probably view this as comedy relief or something, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Now we have this to where this can hook back on itself with using a block. We can put a block in here on the load side and not quite double our strength, but definitely get a lot more power out of the winch by doing that. Theoretically speaking, I think you're supposed to be able to double it, but you got friction and all kinds of things, all kinds of games that physics plays with you that keeps you from getting a full double pull on this thing. So anyway, I'll get this mounted up and get it on the truck. Down here we can lift it. This actually kind of gives it a little bit of a handhold here. You can see underneath here, you can lift this up by hand, you know, with your hands. If these little runners or skids were not under here, this plate would fit flat on the trailer bed, and it would be difficult to get your fingers underneath here to lift this thing up and move it around. And also the skids act as a anti-scratch, so that won't scratch whatever it's sitting on. I hope this gives you some ideas of what you can do and maybe even improve on it. I just thought I would get you guys a little bit of video shot of this thing. But anyway, hope this helps you guys out. Take care and God bless.